Lieutenant General K. Singh, Consul Himalaya Singh, welcome to Vision India at 75, sir. Amrit Mahotsav series.
Thank you very much.
Amrit Mahotsav series, you've been a patron since the beginning that we started 15 months back, along with General V.K. Singh, Lieutenant General Vishnu Chaturvedi, Brigadier Ajit Apte, General K. Rao, Admiral Robin Dhawan, Admiral Sunil Lamba, Air Marshal Bajpayee ji, Air Chief Marshal Arup Raha. These are the Air Marshal S.P. Singh. I hope you remember all of them.
Yes, yes.
And Brigadier Apte has been continuing unabated over the last 15 months, and V.K. Singh also did so. Unfortunately, we missed your presence over the last 3-4 months because of your America visit. And now you're back. We are lucky to have the first Lieutenant General of Northeast back with us. Yesterday was an enthralling show on freedom of speech and expression of media. Today we're going to talk about his area, the area of insurgency, Northeast, India's integrity, nationalism, India's boundaries, unity as a nation, and then future, because activist policy demands a very, very strong India, especially from the Northeast perspective. And if insurgency drives or calls the shots in Northeast, then if insurgency calls the shots in Northeast, then obviously the entire objective of national unity, integrity, and growth shall get affected. General K. Singh is somebody who is an expert in this subject. General K. Singh is somebody who is also acting as an interlocutor for NSCN issues in the affected areas of Northeast via the central government of India. Lieutenant General K. Singh is also credited with having worked across Gen Kh, the Pakistan border, the LOC. And Lieutenant General K. Singh has a global experience of military issues as well. So General K. Singh, I hand it over to you. Insurgency, its history in India, current situation, and the way forward. Over to you.
Thank you, Amit, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much once again. I'll start by saying that Northeast India has seen insurgency for the last 65 years, more than 65 years. I'll give a little background as to the history of insurgency in Northeast India. It started in the 1950s in the Naga hills of Assam. One has heard about one gentleman called Mr. Fijo, who started Naga National Council during the early 1950s. In fact, the Naga insurgency is also called the mother of all insurgencies in India. So the starting of insurgency was in Nagaland. Thereafter, it spread to other parts of Northeast India. It spread to Manipur during the early 1960s, again in Mizoram around mid-1960s, 64, 65. Thereafter in Tripura, then Assam, and of course, last but not the least, in parts of Arunachal Pradesh and Meghalaya. So therefore, you see that after independence, the number of insurgent groups operating in these areas, it started multiplying in every state or every area. For example, the Nagas also had more than 6 to 7 groups. In Manipur, there were over 40 groups, so-called insurgent groups, fighting for what they believed as for their rights. In Mizoram, only one was there, Mizo National Front. In Tripura, there were 3 or 4. In Assam, there were over 6 to 7 insurgency groups. In Meghalaya, there are 3 or 4 insurgency groups. So therefore, right from the beginning of our independence till today, we have seen a large number of insurgency groups in every state. Now, the reason why, the insurgency started growing in Northeast India, to make it very short, one of the main reasons was the historical background of Northeast India. Most of the tribal areas of Northeast India generally claimed that we were not part of British India. Many of them felt that they were not part of the mainstream Indian culture and traditions. Whereas my view is that they were very much part of British India. The administration was by British India or by the local kingdoms, such as Kingdom of Manipur, Kingdom of Tripura, and Kingdom of even Kuch Bihar in now North Bengal. So therefore, the perception amongst the people is that they are different. Added to it was noticed region was very, very underdeveloped till very recently. Underdeveloped, they felt they were being neglected. They felt that they were not part of the Indian mainstream. So, and also other governance issues and administrative issues. So these were, in a very brief, the reasons for their, insurgency movement in almost all the states. However, the specific, the Nagas had a different issue. Assam had a different issue. Manipur had a different issue. So they were different, but what I just mentioned earlier is the general kind of reasons why Northeast India was, completely covered by insurgency movement till very recently. I will take these insurgency issues one by one. Very, very briefly, as I said, Naga Hills of Assam, Naga Hills district of Assam was the first one under Mr. Fijo. They started fighting the Indian security forces from the 1950s onwards. That is why the first Armed Forces Special Power Act was enacted in 1958 by the Parliament of India. Government of India and Naga underground groups made a number of agreements. One was a 9-point agreement in 1947. Second one was 1960, 16-point agreement. Then in 1975, we had the Shillong Accord. But each time the talks failed and the groups were split into various groups. And now, lastly, finally, the Nagas have the framework agreement of 2015 after peace talks which went on since 1997. And still, the talks are still underway for last almost 25 years. So this is the situation as far as the Naga insurgency is concerned. We have another insurgency situation in Manipur where there are more than 30 odd groups from time to time. We have the valley insurgent groups, mostly by the Hindu Manipuris. We have the Kuki militant groups, those who are Chin Kuki group kind of a people, and they are primarily in the hill areas of Manipur. And we also have the spillover of NSCN IM or NSCN Khaplang in the hills of Manipur. In fact, a few years back, we also had the Muslim, insurgency groups who were trying to fight for their rights. So Manipur saw a very, very, chaotic kind of a situation till, let's say, about 15 years back. It started with the establishment of revolutionary government of Manipur in 1964. And then further, it split into a number of insurgent groups. Prominent among them are the UNLF, United Nations Liberation Front of Manipur. Next is the People's Liberation Army. Then next is, KYKL, this is a local name, and various many other, insurgent groups. As I said, there are numbers are more than 30 in Manipur itself. Then the Kukis had the Kuki Revolutionary Army, Kuki National Front, United Kuki Liberation Front. All these are still active. Many of them under suspension of operations with the security forces. But most of them, the powerful ones, are not in talks with the government of India, nor are they under suspension of operations. So that is the situation in Manipur. Some are in talks, and most of them are not in the talks with government of Manipur as well as government of India. Now let's come to Assam. In Assam, the background of Assam was primarily underdevelopment. They felt it was mostly, neglected by the government of India. So it started with the Assam agitation, then All Assam Students Union, and finally, after Assam Accord, or during that period, United Liberation Front of Assam was born, sometime in 1970s. And they took up arms. They had camps in Myanmar, Bhutan, and sometimes in Bangladesh. They were very, very active. At one time, there were more than 4,000, insurgents under ULFA. But today, a large section of ULFA have joined the pro-talks group. And ULFA independence group, those who are anti-talk faction, led by Mr. Pores Barua, are marginalized. In fact, I don't think their strength is more than maximum of maybe anything between 600 to 1,000 insurgent groups, that also operating mostly outside Assam. So the situation in Assam is definitely much better. When I say Assam, there are also Bodo groups. You must have heard about Bodo Liberation Front, Bodo Liberation Tigers, National Democratic Front of Bodoland, and all types of Bodo, because demanding a statehood or sometimes demanding even sovereignty. In Assam, also a few days back, Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji went to a place called Difu, where the insurgents like the Dimasa, Karbi insurgents, almost all of them have surrendered and let down their arms. So Assam is in a very, very good condition as of today, as far as insurgency situation is concerned, except for the ULFA independence group led by Mr. Pores Barua. Now coming to Arunachal. Arunachal Pradesh is affected by insurgency only in 3 districts. Very recently, there were that Khonsa, Longding districts. So these 2-3 districts also have the Naga population, Naga affiliated population. So there, the NSCN, I stand for Isaac Muiva, Isaac and Muiva. Isaac is no more, Isaac Su is no more, Muiva is still alive. NSCN IM and NSCN K K stands for Khaplang. Khaplang is also no more, but the name carries on as Khaplang. So there are some groups in the three districts of Arunachal bordering Myanmar and Nagaland and Assam. So even that insurgency group is also largely under control because NSCN-IM is in talks with the government of India, while NSCN-K is not in talks with government of India. Now coming to success stories, the Mizo insurgency, which started in 1964, around 1964, the reason was very simple. They didn't have, there was famine in the state. But that time, government of Assam somehow failed to look after the lives of the Mijos because there was famous that Mota means, in once in 100 years, there is the bamboos flower and then the rats eat them and then rats multiply and they eat up every possible grain. That happened in 1964. So that time, government of Assam, because Mizoram, present Mizoram was just the Mizo Hills district, Lusai Hills district. So that time, I think we failed as a government, and the central and the state governments failed to realize the problems of the people of Mizoram. So the insurgency was started by a gentleman called Mr. Laldenga. However, after intense fighting with the Indian Army, 1986, Mr. Laldenga signed Mizoram Accord. In 1986, Mizoram was given a statehood, and now Mizoram is largely peaceful. So I can say that Mizoram model, and Laldenga was made the chief minister. Mizoram was a success story, and it continues to be peaceful and very, very progressive even today. Another success story is the Tripura. In Tripura also, in the early 1980s, the tribals of Tripura started revolting against what they call as illegal migrants from, Bangladesh and other, both Hindu and Muslim migrants from Bangladesh. They felt that Tripura was a tribal Hindu kingdom and they have been made into a minority in their own kingdom. So they took up arms under one Mr. Rankal, but thereafter it also split into various groups. But finally, finally Tripura also underwent a large number of accords. And today, we have one of the most peaceful states in Tripura, because that Tripura Accord was a success. That happened about 10 years back. Of course, there was renewed some accords very recently, about 7-8 years back as well. So this is the overall panorama, scan of the insurgency, its history, and what is it now. We shall discuss about the current status and the future or the way ahead. This is what most people will be interested, I'm sure, that people will be interested to know. I shall start with the most powerful of the groups, of the Naga groups, that is the NSCN-IM, with whom the government of India has signed that framework agreement in 2015 after a continuous talk for the last 25 years. NSCN-IM still has about a cadre of approximately 4,000 to 5,000. They are all camped in a place called Hebron in Nagaland. And since 2015, that is about 7 years ago, since the signing, there have been a large number of, parleys between the two sides, how to bring about this accord. Mr. Ravi, who was the interlocutor during this 2015 framework agreement, was also made the governor, and then due to some some issues related to administration and also the direction of the Naga movement, Mr. Ravi and the NSCN-IM fell apart, and they lost the trust of each other. So now the NSCN-IM and the government of India are being engaged through an interlocutor, one Mr. Mishra of the Intelligence Bureau. And a few days back, in fact, Mr. Mishra had gone to Hebron also to have personal meeting with Mr. Muiva. So no one knows what is the outcome likely to be. And also the framework agreement, which was a secret kind of a communication agreement between Mr. Muiva and Mr. Ravi, also NSCN-IM made it public, because of which there has been certain amount of apprehensions in the minds of people of Manipur and in the minds of people of Nagaland as to how the final shape of the accord is going to be. In the meantime, another group called NNPG, Naga National political groups, comprising about 5 to 6 groups of insurgent groups, erstwhile insurgent groups, have also signed another quote unquote agreed positions with the interlocutor. Now, the problem arrives when, while NSCN-IM leadership is largely from Tangkhuls of Manipur, and NNPG's leadership are purely from Nagaland itself. So there are certain friction. Some of the Naga groups in Nagaland, they started talking that the Nagas or Tangkhuls of Manipur should not decide the future of Nagaland. Whereas Mr. Muiva of the NSCN-IM insists that all Nagas are one and they have one destiny, that is sovereign, independent Nagaland for Christ. Mr. Muiva feels that Christianity or God has given them this opportunity to have one country for all the Naga tribes. Mind you, all these Naga tribes, they don't understand each other's language or dialect. They don't have common traditions. They don't have common language. They don't have anything. But they are loosely called by outsiders as Nagas, because they were not Hindus and they have some similarity also as well. So as far as the Naga insurgency or Naga this thing is concerned, the time is now, both the parties the talks are in progress. In fact, I won't say representative, I'm a member of the consultative group on Naga talks of the government of Manipur. So in fact, so that is, the thing is in progress as far as the NSCN-IM is concerned. While we cannot, we cannot ignore the aspirations of NNPG, we cannot ignore the presence of NSCN Khaplang group, other groups. So therefore, the government of India needs to take a very, very measured and very careful steps while arriving at a accord. It should not be rushed through. It must be thought through the outcomes, because its effect is going to be felt in some way or the other in Manipur, mostly in Manipur, but in some way or the other even in Arunachal and Assam as well. Because there are many ethnic groups, identity wars are going on in Northeast India. Every group feels that they are the most special. Every group feels that they are entitled to being special. Like, for example, like, in the framework agreement, there are certain words and, which have been interpreted differently by the government of India on one side and by the NSCN-IM on the other side. For example, There is a word called, shared sovereignty. What does shared sovereignty mean? Many people believe that every state in India or every individual in India, everyone shares the sovereignty of India. Part of, sovereignty means, India is sovereign and we are all part of it. So we share that. That is the another way of, interpretation. While NSCN IM, Mr. Muiva, interprets that shared sovereignty means India is sovereign, just as Nagalim, that is Nagaland for Christ, is also sovereign. That's what he interprets it. Another example of, two entities, coexistence of two entities. So NSCN IM believes two entities means India and Nagalim. They call it Nagaland for Christ. They're, they're, they're two separate entities, separate sovereign entities. Whereas the government of India, interlocutor, feels that when we say two entities, it is just that the signatories are representative of government of India and another is representative NSCN IM. So there are two entities. So therefore, there is that lack of trust, lack of, how these are interpreted. So there the things are went very wrong that Mr. Ravi, who was the governor as well as interlocutor, he left for to be governor of Tamil Nadu, and Mr. Mishra is now doing the work of interlocutor. So that is hopefully the confidence building measures must have been made, and hopefully Naga Accord is, we look forward to early Naga Accord so that peace can return in the region in the true sense. There is not much of violence, not much of a killing. However, there are, illegal taxation, extortion, recruitment, all these are going on by these, groups which are in talks with the government of India. So absence of violence does not necessarily, mean that there is peace. So that is the situation as far as the Naga insurgency is concerned. And future is we are just waiting for the Naga Accord. Manipur. Manipur is another very, very unfortunate case where none of the major groups have agreed to go in for talks with the government of India so far. Therefore, however, their capacity to launch attacks, their capacity to operate without without interference by the security forces, their extortion activities, their murder and killings, political killings, those have significantly been reduced in the last 10 years. Very, very significantly. In fact, they were on the run and their camps are mostly in Myanmar today. Even Bangladesh also did not allow many camps to be established there. So, but they're at a very, very low-key kind of insurgency situation without much of a violence level. People are moving freely. There are no, as I said, no explosions, no killings of any kind in Manipur as of now. But these groups are still active, even though they have reduced their numbers significantly. However, in the hills of Manipur, like Kuki groups, of which there are more than another 15, 20, splinter groups, most of them are under suspension of operations with Government of India pending talks. So what happens is Kuki groups are also waiting that whatever is the outcome of the Naga Accord, they believe that they will also be given similar benefits of their, and also benefits of, their identity, their, development and also their certain autonomous powers and all that. That is what they're looking forward to right now. But but many of these which are in suspension of operations with the government of India, they continue to do extortion, and in fact, they had very significant. They were involved in recent elections in Manipur as well. You know, these cookie groups. In fact, most of the elections, the underground elements have a very, very significant say. What holds the future in Manipur is that everybody, even the valley groups and the cookie groups and others, they are also waiting for the outcome of the Naga Accord. I mean, what will happen? So there is a complete kind of a unrest in the minds of people as to what will be the outcome of Naga Accord and how will it affect Manipur. So that is the situation in Manipur. And as I said, overall, the situation in both Nagaland and Manipur, there are very, very significant number of violence, though there have been violences, insurgency related, but significantly reduced in the last 10 years. So that is as far as Nagaland and Manipur is concerned. In Assam, how will, a large number of people, surrendered militants are being rehabilitated. It is Boris Barwa's ULFA, that is United Liberation Front of Assam Independent, ULFA who are operating in northern Myanmar. In fact, many tell us that they have their offices in Yunnan province of China. But his influence in Assam has been very, very marginalized as of today, because Arvind Rajkuar's faction, Pro Talk, most of them have joined or almost joined the mainstream. Therefore, as I see it, even Boris Barwa, very recently, Chief Minister Hemanta Biswas, announced, that ULFA independence also must come for talks and all that. So it's a good sign. And hopefully Assam, because people of the region do not want any more violence. They want progress. They want development. They want peace. They want education. They want human, development index to grow. They want, proper medical care. They want, normal lives. So I don't think there will be any major insurgency movement in Assam anymore in the future. Coming to Meghalaya. Meghalaya, as you know, there are 3 tribes, of which the Khasis, the Jaintias, and the Garos. So they have different small groupings, but very, very insignificant, I would say. Maybe numbers, maybe all 3 of them, particularly the Khasi and the Garos, all together may not be even 100 to 150. In fact, it won't be wrong to say that their ability to influence or their ability to carry out any violent activity is very, very limited. What they do sometimes is they make up a mass hysteria over an issue, and then the student bodies, and they mobilize the students, and that kind of activity cannot be ruled out. But insurgent activity means, with the mass support, armed, action against the security forces, that kind of a thing, I don't see it in a very major way in Meghalaya. And I feel that it is more of a governance issues in almost all the states, which I'll come later. I'll say the recommendations. So that is Meghalaya is the people are looking up to peace and prosperity. Tripura and Mizoram, I have mentioned that they are success stories as of today. So therefore, now where do we go from here? Overall, the security scenario, internal security scenario in Northeast, as far as insurgency is concerned, it is in a controlled kind of a situation. However, I have certain warning signs. There are Muslim terrorist groups who are trying to come into, particularly in Assam. You must have heard that there were some Al Qaeda members which were arrested from Assam very recently. In Manipur, we have certain Muslim population. In the Kasar area, we have the Muslim population. On the other hand, all these 200, more than 280 ethnic groups, there is an assertion of identity and about their rights and about their privileges under the constitution. They want more. In fact, I am of the opinion that most of the groups in Northeast India, they want they want the benefits of development, but they don't want to be, they want to bear the effects of development. At that time, they want to be secluded from the process of development, yet wanting the benefits of development. So identity wars are in progress, in the sense that every ethnic group wanting the best of their group and the best of their identity. They feel that their identity is being subsumed or being threatened by other groups. So all these are going on in a simmering in underneath.
General
So
Singh, why didn't, I mean, because we are towards the end of the show and I'll have to close this in the first part, because I think we'll need another series with you on this, or probably a full-blown summit, as we've been doing under the Amrit Mahotsav on this issue of resurgence in Northeast. Just a few interactions, if you don't mind, sir. Sikkim, I mean,
yeah,
1975, it was, included in the Indian sovereign democratic republic, 1975, right? And Morarji
yeah,
Desai also was somebody who wasn't very much in favor of that. But Sikkim, we find that it's one of the most progressive states in the country. So essentially, what I feel, it's the governance, is the politics, and it is the way the local administration has handled issues at a state level in coordination with the central government, which is more important than all these minor or probably ethnic issues, or these issues which are basically raked up on economic prosperity grounds and then blown into issues which lead to insurgencies against the state. I think that is more of a problem. Not it's not about being de-alienated from the mainstream. It's about governance failures at the state level. That is where probably Tripura, Assam, Meghalaya, Sikkim have taken the lead over their counterparts, Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland, and one more state. I forget. These are Nagaland, Mizoram, Arunachal, and Assam. So these are some. Now Assam is also doing pretty well in terms of having good control from a state perspective. So your views and the closing remarks, if you do not mind, sir.
I agree with you. I have been saying, in fact, I wanted to end by saying that most of these issues are related to lack of governance. If the governance, if the benefits of the government schemes, if the people have proper governance, if they have proper administration, I see if they don't, if the corruption is reduced, if the officials are very largely honest and politicians do their job, I am of the opinion that all these identity wars and all these insurgencies will be generally under control, as has happened in the last 7 to 10 years. So that is something that which I agree with you. Another issue about Sikkim, I didn't cover Sikkim because there was no insurgency as such in Sikkim. There was in North Bengal that Gurkha, GNLF and all that, they were there. That's why I didn't include Sikkim. Finally, in my closing remarks, I will say that one needs a political will to carry out proper governance. Guns alone, the security forces can only help bringing and controlling the insurgency. They are not the means to an end. And finally, I would like to add by saying that northeastern states are looking up with various government initiatives like Act East policy and all, but we have miles to go because our political and administrative ecosystem needs a lot of revamping to achieve more better peace and prosperity in Northeast India. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Probably, we also have to discuss the foreign hand in all these issues in the next show on this, because they are all bordering states: Bhutan, China, Bangladesh, Nepal, and that plays a very, very important role in terms of flaring up these insurgent sentiments in this country, because ultimately it's money which drives the entire game. But then we have to strike a balance between bullet for a bullet, as Mr. Julio Ribeiro, the former DGP Punjab, he used to say when he handled Punjab. And then what Mr. Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the nation, said, eye for an eye makes the world blind. Thank you so much. We see you again.